Good morning, good afternoon, or perhaps good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to the arts venue reopening and COVID safety panel discussion in India and the UK. This afternoon, we're going to be going through a couple of the topics related to reopening safety for venues, for performing arts, or for events. Today, we're very fortunate to have several important speakers who can give us an idea of what it looks like to deal with cultural programming, as well as looking at safety protocols. Very quickly, as a beginning, I'd just like to invite the current speakers so you can see them once as well. We have today with us as well our collaborators from the Arts and Cultural Resources, an Arctics company. Dipti, could you come and say hi for a second? Dipti is presenting with us together. Before Dipti says a few quick words, I just wanted to present the speakers to you in the room. We have with us Arjun Sagar Gupta from Piano Man here in Delhi. Come on out, Arjun. Let's take a look at you. We have Ravichander from the Bangalore International Center. We have Farah Batool, our very good friend from the Goethe-Institut, Mueller, Bhavan, New Delhi. We also have from the UK, Phil Brown from the Society of London Theatres, who looks after risk management and safety, and Catherine McKinney from the Soho Theatre, the head of finance administration. It's great to see you guys. Thank you so much for making time for this panel today. At this point, I'd love for Dipti to come back and do a quick introduction. We'll see the rest of the speakers in a moment as well as we get back to your topic, so speakers can turn off their videos now. Dipti, floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Varoon. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Our discussion today is, as Varoon mentioned, on arts venue reopening and COVID safety in India and the UK. My name is Dipti, and I'm with the Arts and Culture Resources India, or ACRI for short, a platform for arts and culture professionals to network, share knowledge, access opportunities and resources to upskill themselves, all with a specific focus on arts management and arts administration, primarily in India, but now in South Asia and, of course, overseas as well. ACRI has a network of 56,000 arts professionals and more, and a growing member database. Some of the work we do in the space of sector development and capacity building are in the form of a running series called Festival Connections, which is in partnership with the British Council. We have the Cultural Management in the Digital Age program with the Goethe-Institut, Mueller, Bhavan, Mumbai, and CultureCon, our flagship Indian Arts Management Conference, whose next edition is scheduled for the 26th of April all the way through that week. ACRI also publishes a monthly culture sector newsletter called Culture Wire, and all of this information about all of our projects and Culture Wire is available on our website and Instagram handle that we'll post in chat as well. ACRI operates through 4 city chapters in Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, and Chennai, and we're looking forward to launching the Delhi chapter very soon. Speaking of which, we are very, very glad to host this conversation in partnership with Kaivalya Plays, who we're hoping will take on the Delhi chapter very soon, who are doing some truly excellent work in the space of arts management. I'd also like to say a very, very special thanks to our speakers who have joined us today, Arjun, Catherine, Farah, Phil, and Ravichander. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll let Varoon P. Anand, Artistic Director of Kaivalya Plays, take over now. Over to you, Varoon.
Thank you, Dipti. It's very kind, much better than I could have done. So to get started, we'd love to now get a sense of where we are. All of us are coming at what appears to be the end of a global pandemic that's lasted a year. In fact, we're in the month when most venues around the world started shuttering. Some countries have observed March 13th as the day that most lockdowns have begun. For some of us in India, March 23rd is that date. But where are we today exactly? Well, let's take a look at India. Today, that is March 17th, Wednesday, is the record for highest number of cases all year. 28,903 new cases in India. 70% of those are 70% of those are due to comorbidities, which means a comorbidity is when there's another disease also present. That's the majority of fatalities. But these are concentrated in certain states. What we do understand is that, and what the Ministry of Health has also stated, is that these sudden surge we're seeing is down to one particular reason, which is that people have stopped observing safety protocols. At a time when we're reopening venues, the last thing people want to think about is the fact that we still have to observe safety. But what we're seeing immediately from this chart from the Times of India is that not observing safety has led to an immediate impact. Immediately, we're seeing that we're starting to see a rise in cases again. And what we need to be aware of is that this comes with consequences. Speaking of consequences, a country where immediately upon reopening, a lockdown took place again was the UK. The UK has shuttered their West End in London, the district with all the theaters in it, that employs many, many, many people. But at the same time, they're again coming through a process of now reopening. To give you a sense of what that reopening looks like, again, I'd like to share this image with you, which is the new lockdown easing. The new lockdown easing that's been announced by the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, looks at March 8th as step one, which is when schools have reopened and after-school sports are allowed. 2 people allowed to sit together outdoors. I learned about this personally from one of our team members who finally went and sat next to someone, and care home residents are allowed 1 regular visitor. Towards the end of this month, 6 people or 2 households are allowed to meet outdoors. Outdoor sport facilities will reopen and travel outside the local area will be allowed. Step 2, 12th of April, non-essential retail and personal care open. Hospitality will open again outdoors. Indoor leisure, for example, gyms, which I know many people miss, and swimming pools will reopen. And self-contained holiday accommodations will reopen. Followed by May and June. So the idea seems to be moving towards June, when probably we'll look at, again, most artistic venues reopening. As mentioned, the idea is that this represents many, 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 many jobs. And speaking of that, I'd like to introduce our first 2 speakers. That's Catherine and Phil. Phil from the Society of London Theatres, and Catherine, as I mentioned, from Soho Theatre, looks after finance administration. Welcome, Phil and Catherine. So, hi. I wanted to give both of you an opportunity. From what I understand, Society of London Theatres, for those who don't know, is massive. It looks after a lot. In fact, rather than me saying it and getting it wrong, if I could ask you, Phil, to just give us an idea of how much you have to look at and how many theatres are involved.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my role, I look after health and safety and risk management for the Society of London Theatre, which is essentially the West End, and also another organisation called UK Theatre, which covers the rest of the UK. And between both organisations, we support around about 500 theatres around the UK and many thousands of employees. Just to kind of give you an insight into where we are UK-wide, we are actually permitted to do a little bit of work. But that is kind of live screening or recorded performances. So we can do that for the purposes of them uploading it online or kind of putting it on TV, whatever it may be. But that's the only thing we can do at the moment. And it was great that you put up the timelines of what's happening. The golden egg for us at the moment is the 17th of May. That's what we're all pinning our hopes on, because on the 17th of May, theatres can reopen in the UK. But there is a caveat to that. They can open, but with a limited audience. So we can have 1,000 maximum indoors, or 50%, whichever is the lower. So that's a good thing. And there's a lot of operators who will be opening. I think when I stop talking, I'll pass to Catherine about how that is going to impact on operators. The next step for us is the 21st of June. And on the 21st of June, 5 weeks later, if everything goes smoothly from the May date, in theory, we can then reopen to full audience capacities. Now, there's lots of hurdles, there's lots of hoops that we have to jump through in order for that to happen, but that's still one of the anticipations for the industry, as we can reopen again on the 21st of June fully. Will everyone open then? We're not particularly clear if that will happen. A lot of the bigger operators who've got big casts and crew, most of them are looking for dates later into the year, possibly late summer or early autumn. For the touring world, going around the UK touring in and out of receiving houses, that picture is a little unclear as well. Some smaller scale producers will probably tour, but some larger scale ones, like big shows like Les Miserables, they are probably going to look to later into 21, probably into 22. So the picture is a little clearer. And I think as an industry, we just had our first anniversary yesterday of closures, which was the 16th of March. We've for a year we've been asking our government for a roadmap and dates of when we can reopen. Now we've got that. That's one thing, but it hasn't really been the kind of I suppose the light at the end of the tunnel that we were hoping, because there's still lots of things that we have to jump through in order to get there. One thing I just wanted to touch on, which is happening behind the scenes, is something called the Events Research Programme. And this is something that England in particular are looking at. Obviously, the devolved government around the UK will be looking at this as well. But in England in particular, there's going to be a series of pilots that are starting next month, which will look at events. And that's looking at theatre, sports, conferences. And the government will be looking at how safely we can reopen these events during kind of April and May. And if everything goes well with those research pilots, then hopefully the restrictions that we've still got, like social distance and like face coverings, like all other things, might be released. The flip side could be that during their pilots, they actually find out that some of those things can't be relaxed. So that might mean that in June, when we think we can reopen fully, we still might have some restrictions still in place. So there's a lot of things that are still a little unclear within the UK. In England in particular, we've been fortunate that we have had the opportunity to do a little bit of theatre. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, they haven't been able to do anything for a year, and their roadmap is a little less clear than England. So things are happening, things are kind of moving, but there is still a lot of hurdles to go through. And I guess similar to India, one of the good things is the vaccine program, and obviously that's rolling out really well in the UK, and that will probably be a key driver for how successfully we can think about reopening in the future, because we're dependent on audiences to come in, but we need to feel that audiences need to feel like they're safe when they come back to our theatres. And obviously, as I say, there is lots of things that we still need to think about. But the good thing is venues like Catherine's have got that kind of date to kind of aim for. So I'll probably stop talking now and pass over to Catherine. She can give you a little bit of an insight into what venues are doing.
Well, yes, Catherine, I'd be thank you, Phil. I'd love to kind of also get a sense of, I mean, how big of an operation when you think of Soho Theatre, how many people were affected when you had to shut down? And I'm sure that creates a pressure on reopening earlier, but at the same time having to measure when is the best time to do it. So I'd love it if you could kind of take us through the decision and how it impacted, how many people it impacted. And as Phil mentioned, what you're looking at now for the next few steps of reopening.
Sure, no, absolutely. So I'm going to assume people don't necessarily know Soho Theatre. We're a smaller theatre in the West End of London. We are not one of those big West End houses that you maybe might have visited or would know about. We have 3 small venues in our building. We have a 170-seater traditional theatre. We have a 150-seater cabaret space, and we have a 100-seater studio, all piled on top of each other. And our programming and kind of creative model, if you like, is based on the idea of festivals. We do a lot of work at the Edinburgh Fringe, and we run a program which is multiple shows in each venue each night, usually maybe 6 shows a night. So that can be 1,000 people through our building. That can go up to maybe 12 on a Saturday when you throw in some matinees and things like that. Our programme is a mix of new writing, new theatre. We stray into sort of live performance and live art a little. We do a lot of comedy, tending to be either up and coming emerging talent or big names who want to try out something new. And we do cabaret and drag usually in our cabaret space. And so what you would get at Soho Theatre on an average kind of night is a fairly busy mix of audiences, all of whom may have come to see different shows, congregating in a fairly busy bar on the ground floor to have a drink before or after, to meet people. And I'm kind of setting the scene in this way so that you understand it's a very different prospect when your business is is driven by multiple shows and lots of audiences all intersecting in one place. The logistics of our considerations around how we reopen for COVID are fairly complex and fundamentally involve doing less shows with smaller audiences. which has a financial impact, and that, you know, smaller houses, it's, you know, it's hard to make theatre add up at the best of times, but in smaller houses, it's very tricky when you're looking at a maximum capacity of 50 people. So we are, over the last year, we've been closed. We've been through a period where nothing was happening in the building. We then opened to do some filming, a film called Typical, which was released on our digital platform a couple of weeks ago, and is the story of a man named Christopher Alder, who is a black man who was murdered in police custody in 1999, and it's his story. We filmed that last July, and so to give you an idea of the kind of timeframes we're working to, that went live 2 weeks ago. We then opened our bar over the summer because we were able to get a license to have tables and chairs outside. So we were able to actually have people in our bar and around the building a little bit, but still no shows. So actually it wasn't the most profitable thing for us, because people come to us for the theatre and stay for the drink afterwards. We then closed the bar again, and then just before Christmas we were able to try some pilot live performances with socially distanced audiences, which were broadly successful. And for us, one of the key things was working out how we could have 2 different shows in one venue in one night, and how we would then move those 2 audiences around our building in order to make sure they didn't overlap, but also maintain a good experience for our customers, because they come to us for fun and a good time. And we want to try and be very mindful of that as we continue to look at how we will reopen. We've done a little bit more filming, and then everything shut before Christmas. So we are now, as Phil says, watching and taking what we can from the roadmap and trying to understand how we can reopen our fairly small building and do as much as we need to, because for us financially it stacks up when we do lots and it doesn't stack up when we do less. And our current kind of areas of work are looking at how that can happen. For us, we have about 100 staff. So 40 of those are salaried, and 60 of those are what we call casual employees who work as and when we need them in our box office or front of house or technical or bar areas. We have furloughed everybody, and the government's job retention scheme has been an absolute lifesaver, because it's enabled us to keep people in jobs and to give them the confidence to know that when they come back, there will be a job for them. Without that, we would have had to make significant numbers of our staff redundant. And we did sadly have to make some redundancies, but we have been able to preserve our staff team in a fairly similar shape to the one that we had a year ago. So that's been a huge benefit, because it's enabled us to continue a dialogue with those people who are very committed to Soho Theatre and very committed to coming back to work when they can, and has also enabled us to find ways to support the freelance community, which in the UK, a huge number of people who work in theatre do so on a freelance, self-employed capacity. And we've also been able to support artists by trying to find them work as and where we can, and do what we can to support the wider sector, because it's really important to us that we don't just mothball and shut down and not engage. We've tried to make sure that we are outward looking through all of this, even though our building has been mainly empty. So that's where we are and where we've got to now. I can't remember if that answers your question.
That answers several of them. In fact, it's quite helpful, and it's really quite, in a way, I'm not sure what the right word is, but I guess I'll go with nice. It's nice to know that the problems you face in the UK are not that much different from our own, especially when it comes to programming frequency of performances to ensure that there is revenue. At this point, I'm going to go now and switch over to our 2 panelists who handle venues. And we're going to check in with Phil and Catherine shortly when we open it up to the whole panel. Before I quickly go to Arjun and Ravi, I'm going to share exactly a 5-minute video of Vidyan Singh, who is the Director of Programs at the India Habitat Center. The India Habitat Center is a multi-performance oriented venue. They have restaurants, they have an amphitheater, they have an auditorium, they have various performance spaces, and they hold various conferences. And I had the opportunity yesterday to speak to Vidyan Singh, who took us through a couple of salient points. I'm going to share this, and then we're going to check in with Arjun and with Ravichander ji. So if you'll indulge me for just 5 minutes and see what Vidyan had to say. Here we go.
Varun, the audio is not clear.
Our audience, because it's taken, but I think the main concern out here was that even though a lot of venues had opened up, even though the government guidelines were cutting you slack option to be able to have a higher occupancy, but we felt that it was important. What was most important for us to be able to instill a sense of safety and confidence in our audience, because it's taken over 2 decades to build that audience. So you don't want to lose their trust. You don't want to lose their in a kind of rushed manner to say that, oh, this is a haphazard opening. So we took our time, and we are still proceeding, as I said, very cautiously, erring on the side of caution, actually, by saying that, okay, even though we could accommodate more, but no, we will accommodate only as many as social distancing, COVID protocols allow, very strictly. And I think it'll take a little time, because even now people are coming back. They're coming back into the theaters. That's not a problem. But they're coming back with a sense of testing the waters. And then we hope to see a return in larger numbers. For instance, the Oriental Octopus it's a really popular space, but it's smaller. So that hasn't been reopened because it's not possible to make it viable, to open it up if you can accommodate just 10 people in it, And so if we have to follow social distancing, then, well, I'm exaggerating, but I'm saying that it would mean that you can't accommodate a critical sort of number that you need to make a place viable. So yeah, so we're opening that up slowly, phase by phase. So there are conferences that are coming back. There are events that are coming back, but with limited numbers, with caps on numbers, with all the COVID protocols in place, with the kitchen hygiene, with the serving hygiene, with the sort of cleanliness hygiene, all that. So it's a learning process for every space that is opening operations. They're literally learning as they go along to see what more is required. People have been, I would say, by and large, quite cooperative in terms of it's made them more disciplined in terms of, firstly, we are doing like online registration so that we know what kind of numbers are coming in. And we stop the registration when we feel that this is it, because we are doing sort of social distancing in terms of our seating. So it's every alternate seat in the auditorium that can be occupied, clearly marked. We're following all the sort of sanitizing, sanitizing stations, cleaning, all that is fine. But you know what Delhi is like. But what one has seen is that, yes, they have been sort of maintaining some degree of distancing the way it's marked when they're waiting. We've tried to stagger entry, and our security is very vigilant in terms of the thermal screening, in terms of letting people in with a sort of suitable gap and everything. People are wearing their masks, but it's still completely beyond one's control when they get inside and they feel, oh, now I'm inside, so they'll take their mask off, or so now we've actually got people from the team actually go around checking if somebody's taken their mask off and sort of gently reminding them that, you need to put your mask back on. Because for every 10 people who say that, okay, we don't care, there is that one person who's taken that chance to come out and is not comfortable with the fact that somebody else is not observing that. So what we can, and we have announcements reminding people. So we've done whatever we could, and we are adding on more things as we go along. But the fact is that at the end of the day, the only way to contain it and control it is by, if there is awareness in the person themselves, because there are no sort of things that you can enforce beyond a point of time. I mean, beyond a limit, there is only that much you can do. That yes, like you have the government fining you if you are caught without a mask in the car and, whatever. But, instead of policing, that really it helps to be able to get a little bit of sense of fear and this thing. But beyond that, it's really creating the awareness that, look, a second wave is going to be disastrous, not just for you, but for everybody. And it is that sense of social responsibility that one needs to be able to keep, not lose sight of, but keep underlining the fact that it's the little things that are going to go a long way in ensuring that you are going to be safe. And if you are going to be safe, so is the next person.
I'd like to thank Vidyan Singh for sharing her insight. We have a full 40-minute interview with her, which we'll be sharing separately as resources, but I wanted to get her perspective in from Habitat World, and also because she mentioned specifically the steps taken, how to make people conscientious about observing safety. But now that we've gotten into the topic of venues in Delhi and India, I'd like to speak to Arjun and Ravichander ji. So Ravi and Arjun, if you could pop on your screen, great. So Ravichander ji, I'll start with you first. You look after, among many things, I think, besides, but also you look after the Bangalore International Center, is that correct?
That's right.
I've had an opportunity to perform at the Bangalore International Center twice now. It's quite an interesting venue. In 2019, I was there on 2 occasions, and it's gaining quite a lot of popularity. And I believe there are some ideas that you are putting forward, in fact, that were brought to our attention that we're very excited to hear. Can you tell us a bit about what the process was like for you of shutting down and reopening?
Okay, so very quickly, BIC, it's a platform for informed conversation, arts and culture. And we went to our new premises February 2019. So in the pre-pandemic year, in 1 year, we had about 250 events at the venue, which were BIC events. And outside of that, we had about 300 hires of the premises. We have about a 180-seater auditorium, 2 halls, another 120 out there, a gallery, a library, an amphitheater, and a terrace area. So it was really a mixed bag, and it was a very vibrant space. I think we had about 7,000 to 8,000 people come into the premises per month pre-pandemic. Obviously, post-pandemic, April, everything shut down, and we were allowed to operate sometime around mid-October is when we were officially allowed to open. So between April to October, we had costs because we kept all our staff. The UK government has a plan. In our case, we are a non-profit, but we made sure that all our staff stayed on the rolls. We had about 10 people on our rolls. And also the housekeeping security, we toned it down, but there were costs involved in running the premises, but no income. Post-October, when we were allowed, surprisingly, our way back into some kind of sustainability was through our F&B operation. Ironically, we had got our bar license the day the lockdown started. So we had paid for a bar license that we could not monetize. And so we started with the F&B operation, and actually that started giving us some decent income from being zero, and the rentals came in a bit later. And the reason the F&B revenue started coming back, the people came, is our venue between the foyer and the outdoors and even the restaurant feels quite open. So it's not closed spaces, and and we also have the terrace, so that helped us get some kind of F&B revenue. Now, in Bangalore, we had an initiative called the Spaces Collective. It was driven by Arundhati Nag, who runs Rangashankara, a theatre space. So a group of 14, 15 space venue people, we came together and we actually held hands on Zoom saying, how do we get over this? And we shared a lot of resources, in terms of collaterals, making the place safe, safety protocols and the like. But we also went to government to see in what way they can help us. And I think this is the only city that tried that initiative. And we did get one single benefit, which is for spaces like us, they wrote off the fixed electricity charges per month for 6 months, the time that we were closed. And for something like BIC, that worked out to 50,000 rupees a month. So it was helpful for sure. But beyond that, we couldn't get any other relief from the government in terms of any help from them, in terms of monetary help for sure. Now, coming to the rules and regulations, it's been a yo-yo, as I think you mentioned at the beginning. We don't even have a space which defines us in government records. So you have, you have marriage halls, you have, burial and funeral spaces, and you have cinema theaters, but not spaces like BIC and Rangshankara. And along with Dipti, actually, the Spaces Collective, we try to put together a taxonomy to define spaces like ourselves, which has a events auditorium and halls and galleries and the like. But that effort hasn't gone anywhere as yet. Now, currently, what we are observing is that compared to our normal audiences, if earlier 150 people, so we have now started, obviously we pivoted to Zoom during the pandemic. We started podcasts. So in 1 year, we have done about 100 podcasts. We have done over 250 Zoom events over the last year. But since November, December, we have started some hybrid events, partly in the hall and partly online. And we have now also started only at venue events, and it goes up on YouTube the next day. All our events are free to attend. And our experience right now is that a third of the audiences are coming back. So, Varoon, if 150 people came to hear you last time, this time around about 50 would come in. I mean, that's what we are noticing repeatedly, that about a third of our audiences are okay to come to the physical venue. And we are seeing that over a series of events. So there's some sense of a pattern out there. The problems that we are facing in the venue are similar to what we heard earlier, and particularly from Vidyun. How do we get them to, the audience to be responsible for others? And the biggest, earlier we used to scrub the place to death. The paints were coming off. Now it's quite clear that fomite transmission is not a big thing. It's more the mask and the hand washing and physical distancing are the three things that we need to be careful about. So what we are doing is trying to keep on ensuring that happens. For people who don't wear masks, and it does happen in our auditorium like in other auditoriums, we have minders who go and do tell them to wear their mask over their nose. But the thing we tell them, that we know that you're okay, but this is to protect you from others. So the reason that we give them to wear the mask is for their protection, because what we discovered is the reason they are not wearing their mask is they feel they are okay and not a risk to anyone else. And that's the reason they are dropping the mask. So we are now positioning it more as something that is a protection for them. The other thing so that's one thing. The other thing, in the early days, we used to take mobile numbers and the like because we wanted to keep track of contact tracing. Now we do only just the temperature checks. We do the usual sanitization, but we are not going overdrive on scrubbing the place down. The focus is on making sure that people are wearing masks, social distance, and encouraging hygiene. The current rules as they stand in Bangalore, because the second wave is being spoken about, we are now allowed between 50 to 100 people indoors for ceremonies, stroke events, whatever that means, or 50% of capacity, whichever is lower, is what's allowed. But if you want to get to your own norm of what is allowed, it is to allow 36 square feet per person. 3.3 square meter per person is the norm that the government has set out if you're in doubt. So technically, if you have, let's say, a space which is 3,600 square feet, you are allowed to have 100 people out there. So that's really the norm. Outdoors, 100 is allowed, but for marriages, you could go up to 500. That's the current position. We are treading carefully because there is risk in terms of it coming back. The only area where we are doing something different from what Vidyun mentioned, we are not leaving alternate seats free. If a group of 5 come together, we treat the 5 as a bubble. So we allow the 5 to sit together with masks on, and we leave the next 2 seats vacant. So we basically treat groups that come together as bubbles, and then so our seating is more dynamic. There's somebody in the hall who takes care of that. And in the F&B, people within within a table are a bubble. I mean, it's a self-chosen bubble. And in common areas, we encourage people to wear masks. So this is broadly what we are doing, Varoon.
Well, thank you for that elaborate answer. It's lovely to see someone who really knows their safety practice, because remembering can be such a difficult task sometimes. I'm going to check in with you again in just a second, Raviji, because I'm very interested in learning about the cultural programming aspect as well. But in terms of all the things you do, that reminds me also of Arjun in Piano Man. For those of you watching who have not heard of Piano Man, firstly, please stop living in a cave or outside of Delhi. But secondly, Piano Man is a venue legendary in Delhi over time, one for the type of programming, which is jazz music, but at the same time, it has allowed multiple artists opportunities to perform. I would not be exaggerating, and Arjun would never admit it, is that he's one of the most loved people in Delhi for the opportunities he's given to musicians to perform, and including people like myself who do improv and comedy. We've also performed at Piano Man. But what I do remember about Piano Man, along with the fact that Chick Corea performed there in a very legendary quiet show, is that it's always packed. And now, Piano Man reopening, and again, what was lovely was Arjun was one of the first people when the pandemic hit to immediately get on the net and start performing, trying to find ways of doing music online with artists in other countries, and it was fascinating to watch. But now that you're in the process of getting back open, and along with a performance venue and also serving and a restaurant, you must have a lot of concerns. Plus, you have a bigger venue now in a different place. So tell us, just give us an idea of what you're dealing with, Arjun.
Oh man, there's such wonderful information that's coming from both Catherine and Ravi that I'm still also processing. It's so interesting to learn about what's happening in the UK as well. Much the same. Once the pandemic hit, we tried to figure out how we can maintain our primary sort of task, which is to maintain that bridge between artists and audiences. Which is why we went on that digital platform immediately. We started airing interviews every single day. I realized that I had to space that out because over time I was getting burnt out. It was nice to take a little space as well. In August, we were allowed to reopen. I think it was July or August that we were allowed to open indoor spaces, maybe July. But it's mid-August when we started Piano Man Delhi. And in September is when we were allowed to serve alcohol, which is kind of when sort of the switch happened for us. And we decided to open Gurgaon as well and double down. Now, Catherine mentioned earlier that people essentially come to Soho for the performances and then consume, they spend at the bar and whatever else. The Piano Man, it works both ways. We don't have people coming in unless we have an event, and we don't have revenue unless we have F&B to sell. So it didn't make sense to open the space to be allowed to serve alcohol. And once that happens, it's like, how do you, especially at Delhi Club, it's a really small space. It's a really small space. How do you make it commercially viable with 20 people? Well, the short answer, just to sort of cut through a lot of conversations, that you can't. But at the same time, we also wanted to find a way to, resume so that we could still ensure that their payments going out to artists, however much it could be. At the same time, there is a future. I mean, we're looking forward to getting to somewhere. With regards to our teams, I mean, Ravi mentioned we haven't had much support and from the government in the fact that we aren't even defined as a unique or independent space. We're just an F&B space, though we aren't. That's not how we work. That's not what we do. And because of that, it became very, very difficult over the last year. We don't have a non-profit sort of status. We don't have any institutional support. We've built the brand absent of any support or sponsorships, right? And when that does happen, it's kind of a cherry on top if we get sponsorship or an event here and there. But we've kind of tried to make performance art sustainable in the absence of patronage, which is kind of a classical concept of how art is funded. And there, what happened is that, for example, our employees, there was a short period, a couple of months, a month and a half, after the lockdown that we could still support them in some way or the other, but then we ran out of cash flows completely, absolutely dead broke. And for the next 6 months, there were certain expenses that were being incurred because at the end of the day, we have spaces on rent, we have electricity bills, we have license fees, which is still flowing out without any sort of compensation or support from the government, which is fine. I mean, we learn to live with it. That's the environment we're in. Fortunately, we survived that. We had support from, for example, our landlords, both in Delhi and in Gurgaon, were very supportive. They allowed us both discounts and deferments in payments that ensured that one of our main expenditures in that lockdown situation, which was rent, was sort of handled, and so on and so forth. We found methodologies to sort of manage cash flows. With regards to our employees, we've come back, or when we originally came back, we came back with about 35 to 40% of our employee base. Also, our senior most management had pay cuts. Our juniors also had a small pay cut when we started immediately. Fortunately, today, as of February, our entire team that's working is back on 100% salary, and we've hired back some more of our old staff. So we're somewhere at about 45-50% of our old staffing. Let me talk about the good things first, because a lot of bad things happened in Corona for all of us in this industry. Some of the positives that happened is that since the day we started 6 years ago, we've had events every single day of the week. A small team managing events in that sort of a breakneck calendar, and once Gurgaon opened, it doubled up. And I don't know if you know, but as of Monday this week, we started afternoon events the first time. We actually have events every afternoon as well, Monday to Friday, in both the clubs. So on an average day, we're running at least 4 events today, as of now. And pre-COVID, again, like when you're in that space, when there's something happening all the time and you have no space or room to think, a lot of system inefficiencies creep into how your organization works. And that's obviously not a good thing. So I think the most positive ray of hope that came out of being shut and having time to think, and my entire senior management team, having time to interact with each other without having to run to, okay, that's a table that needs attention, or, XYZ. We've come back with a much stronger set of systems in place, things that we've been working on for 2 years, but have had varying degrees of success in implementing. And we've also come back with with our older systems being a lot more efficient, which means that today, with 50% of my old audience coming, or 50% of people coming, with 55% of revenues, actually not even 50% of the audience, 30% of the audience, 55% of revenues, we can survive. We are operationally stable, which is, it's a good place to be, trust me. Now, coming to what we're doing, I mean, when we came back in, obviously, we were extremely paranoid about, we were also scared. It's not just about, I'm scared for my team, I'm scared for my artists, I'm scared for my customers, and I'm scared for myself. I live at home with my parents. They're both in their 60s. So the question was, how do we make the safe space for everyone, right? It's not just about you, it's everyone. So, like Ravi mentioned, crazy amounts of, surface sanitization, crazy amounts of just observing everything and ensuring that very few people are coming in. Though, like he mentioned, when a group comes in, in fact, in Delhi, they allowed 4 people to sit together at a time. So we did that as well. And as time has progressed, the intensity of these operations hasn't changed, in the sense we still sanitize all our surfaces. We still sort of, we do temp checks. We still do contact tracing. So we ensure that, and we're supposed to do that anyway. So, we make sure that that's done. We're just trying to also look at historical data. So touch wood, since we've opened in September, we haven't had any instances. And we ascribe that to just following these basic processes and procedures. And this is what we tell everyone, just do it. Now, the disadvantage of having a bar is that if somebody's 3 links down, they don't often, listen to what you're trying to say. So if they'll walk around without their mask, or they'll, so then we, our teams are instructed to be as strict as possible, and more importantly, to observe who's uncomfortable. There's somebody in the space that says, I'm not comfortable with the way that person is behaving, and we need to address that immediately. you know, it's a fine balance. I mean, I don't know how else I can put it. I'm very fortunate that we've always built our spaces with a separate green room. So our artists are always sort of in their own space. And, you know, we've resumed comedy also in a very aggressive manner. We've had, you know, on average about 12 to 20 comedy shows a month between the clubs. And they're also, you know, that's the space because some of the comics during this lockdown suddenly become like, you know, social media celebrities because, you know, the content sort of works well on a digital medium. And when people come in and listen to them, they swarm around the comic after the show. One day this will happen with musicians as well. I'm waiting for that day. But, you know, it's lovely to see the love. But at the same time, you know, the first time this happened, I think it was Bussy was performing and there was just like a swarm of people who wanted to meet him. And I went up to him and I said, what do we do? You know, I don't want them. So though he was also like, it's all right, let them meet me. But, you know, as a venue, it's our responsibility to make sure that there's distance. So I literally stood there and I'm like pointing at people who are standing in line without a mask and, you know, just shouting it away. So that kind of, it's micro stuff, but the entire team has to participate. And we have to observe every single individual, the behavior of the people that's coming in and out. But at the same time, we're so glad to be able to program again. We're at almost 400 shows post-COVID, physical at the venue. We're in a unique sort of space to be able to do that because across Europe and across the US, it's not possible because people have been shut. You know, at the same time, you know, although we've significantly reduced our online content, but, you know, you spoke about putting music online. I actually found it difficult to put music online simply because if I'm trying to coordinate a concert with people in different places, the latency doesn't work, right? Yeah, at least the performers have to be together. That's why I switched the format of my online shows completely to interviews. And, you know, we dug into the lives and the histories of the artists from across the world who played piano and others. So it's been an interesting space. Today, we're looking forward to, we don't have a very clear roadmap of what's going to happen in the next few months. I think a lot of what we're observing in our country is reaction to what's happening, which means today with Maharashtra hitting 18,000 cases, and, you know, I think there's a lockdown in one of the cities, right?
In Nagpur
Nagpur only, yeah. Yeah. So, you know, that's scary. It's scary because that, you know, that's next door. And that could happen here as well. I don't know how well anybody in our situation, in our industry, arts, entertainment, F&B can handle another lockdown. But at the same time, we know that it might happen. So, and we know what it's like. So we can prepare better. But we're all hoping that, very, very happily so the vaccine drive in India has been implemented quite decently so, from all the reports and all the interactions and our own personal experience. And we just hope that, you know, a month or two down the line, things are more normalized.
Perfect. I want to come back to both of you because I want to talk about cultural programming. And I know Raviji also has a certain vision for looking forward to cultural programming, but I want to give Catherine and Phil a chance to also jump in that discussion. So before I come back to both of you with that, I wanted to take a look at what's happening also in an arena of cultural programming, which also involves larger ideas such as working internationally and working with academics. So one of those things is I'm also a Spanish teacher at the Cervantes Institute, and one of the institutes that's very close to our heart, very similar, is the Goethe. So before I go to Farah and ask her what's the change in terms of cultural programming as well, I wanted to show you a very simple 90-second video of the Instituto Cervantes, the Spanish Cultural Center, and show you in 90 seconds what their current safety protocol is when entering the building. So just take a look at this.
Simple walkthrough of the Instituto Cervantes safety procedure. As you can see, you're on your own responsibility outside, but still spaces have been marked to maintain distance. Once you enter, the first thing is a temperature check, sanitary check here. Your names are noted down on a register for the class with a metal detector. Notice that at no point is ID required. Temperature check. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Once again here, clear arrows marking, maintaining distance, heading towards stairs. Upon climbing stairs, clear signage. And Glass has been added with receptionist with a mask, plus separate points for entry and exit, and sanitizer. Clear signage. Classrooms with distance maintained between students. And once again, disinfectant spray and sanitizer available, and information. And again, clear indications walking towards the library and the bookstore, indicating ways to go and count.
Yes, that video ends very abruptly because the academic director was thrilled to see me. So that was the academic director at the end, who you saw. And just like us at Cervantes, Farah looks after programs for Max Mueller Bhavan, the Goethe-Institut, which is one of the most active in India in terms of commissioning work, allowing, again, performers to create work. In fact, earlier this year, I got a chance to see a program called Refunction, which looked for new projects, and I understand that digital was also part of it. So Farah, I mean, I think you occupy, again, an interesting space where you are working in India, and there are guidelines here, and at the same time, you have access to guidelines that come from the EU. And I'm just wondering what it's like when it comes to implementing is when there's the guidelines here and there's ones you're receiving that can be done. And when it comes to doing all the level of programming, because you also have classes, performance events, conferences, all these things. One is, what is the outlook like going forward for the year? You're one of the busiest people I've ever met. So I know it's a lot of work, and how much has changed because of COVID to that workload?
Okay, that's a lot of questions. I will actually start by describing that when the lockdown happened, we were at the peak of one of our largest projects, which had spanned over 2 years. It was called 5 million incidents, and we had planned 28 incidents or programs, events, on the week the lockdown happened. So we were like suddenly left with 28 artists asking for directions and wanting to know how we are going to go forward. Immediately, of course, everything was shut down. The classes were shut down. The programming was shut down. Exams were shut down. And as you would know, and also, I mean, similar for Cervantes and us, that people who go to Germany or students who go to study in each of our countries, countries that we work for, not each of our countries, require a certain degree of fluency in the language, so that, and they need a certificate. So the exams are really important for them to go forward. So with everything shut down, we were also grappling with the fact that how are we going to go forward? And for this, both the guidelines actually have to be taken into consideration, the guidelines that we receive from the government in Germany, and also the guidelines of Indian government. Regarding the language school and exams, the guidelines for the Indian government is followed. So we waited till the time Indian government actually started opening schools, which is for the 9th and for the 10th and the 12th. That is when the exams started happening. For us, in fact, the classes have not started in the institute. Only the exams are taking place in this institute. And that also with the very, very strict guidelines. There's social distancing, there's masks, there's sanitization, everything that you showed is there in Goethe-Institut right now when you enter. And only people who come for exams are allowed to enter. So normal dealing with public is still not open. And even for our offices, for general working, we are only coming twice a day. So part of the team, twice a week. So part of the team comes on certain days, and other part comes on other days. And we are all now very well connected digitally. I'm sitting in my home, and whole day we are connected through digital medium. Coming to the programming, that was the biggest challenge for us, because immediately we had to look for other ways. Of course, we are not an institution that is commercial, so we did not have to worry so much about the financial part of it. But of course, for our audience and the audience that we have, we want to give them constantly something to see, something to especially in lockdown, so we had to really work around finding new content for our events. We knew that putting something, just recording something and putting it online, like Arjun said, you cannot just put music online, because you need to find a proper format that works for digital. So we had to dig into brains of our partners and ourselves, and came up with various formats. So for instance, the Refunction grant that you just mentioned, we had to announce a digital grant. We had to announce specially placed to be created for the digital platform. And of course, with new format comes new difficulties. So even everyone who has got the grant is grappling with how to deal with it, how to write plays for digital, especially performance. It's a huge thing. I mean, when Arjun can say something like that about music, which is more, that you even see a video and you get very excited about an artist playing. But when it comes to performance, everything is so much, it's very difficult to put performance, just recorded performance online. So working with performance was I think the hardest for us. The easiest thing for us to do was to have conferences online, which we did. We had many conferences. To have to have films online. So basically, putting films online was also one of the easier things for us. Having film festivals, having discussions, those kind of formats were much more easier for us. And what it also did, which is I think a plus thing for us, is that it opened up a larger audience through this format. So if I was programming a film festival sitting here in Delhi, my colleagues in Bangalore could also take that festival for their public. So it wasn't that if something was getting organized by Delhi, it will only be for Delhi. It could be for Bangalore, it could even be for Dhaka or for Colombo. We just had to get the right permissions, and we were like out there, and we were, we had suddenly a larger audience to address. The other thing that happened, which happened through the Goethe-Institut, was there was something that the German government actually floated. It was called Hilfsfonds, which is help fund for the organizations that we work very regularly with, people who, both Mr. Ravichander and Arjun, they both talked about how difficult it was to sustain, even Catherine spoke about it, to sustain a commercial venue. So people who we regularly worked with, the government offered funding, which was through an open application, which already was given in September. So from September to December, we had that kind of funding for our partners. But as of now, we are being very, very cautious. We are being very cautious about opening the institute. We don't have our classes in the institute. We are not having any events as of now in the institute, but we are planning to have, by the end of March, we are opening our institute for events, but again, being very cautious, like Vidyun talked about all the protocols that the Indian government has. We are going to follow all the protocols that are here. We are going to follow the social distancing, the masks, the sanitization, checking of temperature at the gate. All these things are already happening, and that will also be part of all the events. And we are trying to plan events as much as possible in our lawns and not in closed spaces. So this is how we are proceeding from now.
Well, as many questions as I asked, Farah covered every single one. That's impressive. But one more thing I'll add that Farah mentioned in the beginning, and I just like to show this, the project she mentioned in the beginning, which is 5 million incidents, one of the most visible projects, and the points of the project was to engage with art in a public space. One of those was velocity pieces, 100 velocity pieces by Abhintesh Grover. And as you can see, it was a billboard placed in front of the Goethe-Institut. This is the Max Mueller Bhavan in New Delhi, whose signage was changed constantly. But I'd like you to see one more thing, which is, this is a picture from March 2020, last year, of the sign being changed. And if you believe Farah is someone who sits in the office, you'd be highly mistaken, because that's her right there, putting the sign up herself. So this is a year ago, when this sign has actually been quite a talking point in the city. And even through the pandemic, there were a few times that we got the chance to see the signage go up and engage with it. And it spoke to what was happening around us. And it was a quite important project.
Like to add here, thanks for mentioning that, Varoon, that during the pandemic, that was the first thing we started doing, because that was out there, it was for people to see. So we decided the moment we had the lockdown was lifted, then we spoke to Amitesh, and every week we used to get a new message regarding what was happening and what was happening around us. And then it became weekly. Initially, it was daily. Of course, we couldn't do that with the lockdown, with everything. So, shut and very less staff being there. But yeah, we started doing it weekly. Thank you for mentioning that.
It was a great project. I was really thrilled with it. So now at this point, I'd love for all the speakers to appear on screen. And now we get a chance to check in with everybody and talk about what everyone's been doing. There's a couple of questions I have prepared. And again, I'll call upon you. But if at any point you have something you'd like to bring up, share, please feel free. The first question I had was about the biggest challenges you foresee in the coming future. What are the ones that you see like these? This is the main thing I have to take care of, and I may or may not know how to do it. And I'd like to reiterate, this panel is about the fact that we don't necessarily have all the answers, but we're trying our best. So again, I love to check in with Phil and Catherine first. For you guys, what do you foresee is the biggest challenge coming up right now?
I suppose that's the $1 million question, really. I think it's more of a personal issue. I think my worry is we've got the roadmap with the reopening stages in the UK, and it's whether those reopening then cause spikes within kind of the UK, and then means that the dates we've got have to be pushed back. I guess my other worry is, if you take the 17th of May and the 21st of June, that's a 5-week gap where we can open on the 17th of May at 50%. And then in theory, we can reopen on the 21st of June at 100%. I just don't know if that's practical or realistic, in all honesty. So I think I don't want to put a dampener on things, because I'm really excited about getting the industry back up, because I love the industry. You know, I've worked in it for a number of years, but I just think there is a lot of problems that I can see happening over the next few months. You know, in December, we managed to reopen, but that was quickly closed again because of the spikes. And that was within the space of, 2 or 3 weeks. We had really exciting times, and then we had to reclose everything very quickly again. And I guess my worry is in the UK, we open everything too quickly, and then that just means that we have to start closing things down again, which I hope doesn't happen, but that's always in the back of my mind.
What about you, Catherine? Similar?
Yes, with my finance hat on, I'm working to a similar kind of set of ideas as Phil in terms of our budget, and for that reason we're budgeting very, very cautiously, because we don't necessarily expect, even if we can have 75 people in one of our venues, we don't necessarily expect 75 people will turn up. But we're also not opening our third venue, our little studio on the top floor, which historically has been quite, it gets very warm in the summer. I mean, UK warm, let's be honest. But UK audiences do not enjoy it so much. It's a smaller space. It's got a low ceiling. It doesn't have brilliant ventilation like the others. It doesn't lend itself to being COVID safe. And therefore we've taken the decision that one, unless things go brilliantly, that one doesn't come back online until probably November, which is way beyond the government kind of roadmap as it stands. But the biggest sort of concern, I think, a topic of conversation that I'm having with colleagues both at Soho and in the wider London theatre is around vaccinations and audiences, and how we are going to navigate a world in which all of the mitigations that we've talked about are still in place, but some people have also been vaccinated, but you don't know who, and what that will do to audience confidence, and what we as a venue have a responsibility to then do in return, because actually in legal terms we can't do very much. We can't force people to disclose whether or not they've been vaccinated, nor can we, you know, demand that our staff are vaccinated. So we are, and we're certainly navigating this with the staff who are working at the moment, because there is nervousness about returning to work. But more widely, what that means when you have, you know, somebody who comes to the theatre for the first time in more than a year and suddenly realizes that they don't know whether the person sat more than a metre away from them has been vaccinated, and that bothers them, and that bothers them enough to say something or to leave the theatre, and how you, all of that is really, really unknown at the moment. And Phil will be integral in working out, I'm sure, what the plans are through his roles on many committees, and we will look to people like Phil to give us the answers. But it's the human side of it that's the big issue. We can navigate the finance by, you know, taking measures, and we have lots and lots of artists who are super excited about coming back and performing. We will not have a shortage of those. But what we don't know is what the audiences are going to do yet. And that's why, you know, it's great that there are pilots happening, because they will help us feel more confident on that front.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a lot of pressure on Phil too, actually. And if at any point,
I did that on purpose.
If at any point anyone wants to comment on anybody else, that's great too. I just, speaking of venues and speaking of that as well, Arjun, like for you as well, do some of those concerns echo with you as well?
I mean, it's identical. It's for once the whole world is in the same situation together, you know. But I just out of curiosity, Catherine, like, is there a percentage of your staff that you feel would not want to get the vaccination?
We are only allowed to say that it is our preference as their employer that they are vaccinated. We are not allowed to make it a condition of their employment. Okay. And we are not allowed to refuse them entry to the building. What we would then have to do is say, well, okay, you would need to be tested a couple of times a week, and you will absolutely always need to wear a mask in the building. And you get into the sort of, we're going to make you look different to everyone else territory, which is uncomfortable for me.
Absolutely.
Given that we know that's not what we do. So it's a tricky one, because we don't have a legal position to fall back on that gives us anything like the confidence we need. And we already have members of staff who are saying, I don't want to sit in an office with somebody who isn't vaccinated.
That's understandable.
Yeah, it is. So there are lots of conversations ongoing, and the thing that I took away from a recent employment law seminar on this was, as a venue and as an employer, we need to have a set of rules, which is what we kind of communicate to our teams and our audiences. But everybody has had a difficult 12 months, and everybody has had different experiences, and those experiences will colour their approach to the return to work. And we cannot make any assumptions about that, and an awful lot of this is going to have to be dealt with, certainly with staff, on a case-by-case basis. And in practical terms, what that means is a lot more HR and a lot more personnel conversations that will ultimately result in, hopefully, people feeling like they can come back to work. But there is no way round that, because we can kind of legislate for the mass, you know, the whole. But the whole is made up of lots of individuals, and so that's currently our approach, is a sort of a pincer movement with rules on one side and hugs and sympathy on the other.
Just coming on that. Sorry, can I just come in on that a second? Just interestingly, we are having discussions with the unions behind the scenes in regards to how this is going to operate. You know, some performers have already stated that they only want to work with people who've had vaccinations. You know, they don't want to do intimate scenes on stage with someone who hasn't had vaccinations. So there's colleagues, thankfully it's not all on my shoulders, some colleagues who work in the industrial relations team, they are in negotiations already with kind of the actors unions, the musicians union, and the kind of the backstage unions, in regards to some concerns that have been raised already. So we've got the audiences on one hand that we probably will need to think how we manage that in the industry, but we've also got how we manage people working in the industry as well. Obviously, we have got anti-vaxxers in the UK, probably like, all countries have,
Well,
and that we have to, how we manage that, as Catherine said, do people want to even sit in an office with someone who hasn't had the vaccine? So there's lots of things that unions have raised already that we obviously representing the organisations in the theatre of business, we are already starting to talk about what we can do. And obviously we are getting more advice from kind of, HR lawyers, because it's a minefield of what potentially this could look like in the future.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So the reason I asked that question is, for example, we polled our own employee base, which is currently down to about 60 odd people from 150. And we offered that we would sort of cover the cost of the vaccinations or whatever else, and we got fortunately a very sort of 100% sort of yes, we're in, But then at the same time, when we come back to our guests and our audiences, there is no way for us to actually be able to ascertain who would have a vaccination or not. So we are definitely hopeful that there is some sort of vaccine passport, at least for the near future, that's implemented. But even if it isn't, we intend to continue the protocols that we've maintained that have kept us safe so far, regardless of the penetration of the vaccination through the city. And I feel that, whether it's something that might be required to be done 6, 8, 10 months, 12 months down the line, even if we're at 100% capacity, implementing the basic sort of, sanitization protocols, implementing, surface sanitization, implementing temperature checks, will always, at least until this is sort of completely fizzled away, it'll provide us with a security blanket. Besides that, for one of the things that we're doing, we're expanding the size of our space in Delhi, because we also understand this is a new problem, where this, like, Catherine mentioned about her studio, which is like the smaller venue. Our Delhi club is a pretty small venue, so we're increasing the capacity to make people a lot more comfortable. But at the end of the day, this year, 2021, will also boil down to individual preferences. A bulk of our sort of usual, regulars, they write to me, every week, but they still don't come to the club because a lot of them are older, they're not comfortable. And, the thing that we can say to everyone is that each individual needs to be comfortable in the skin. They need to be comfortable with what they're doing. And we need to have empathy for the people around us, because at the end of the day, it's a problem that all of us face. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be slow steps. Maybe we'll have a growth of a few % a month over the next 2-3 months. And it'll take maybe 6-8 months till we get back to normal operations, if that.
Go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, the thing which, I'm paranoid about as we open up really is, of course, a super spreader event. That's the thing you want to avoid. So that's the immediate short-term worry. The medium-term worry is about financial sustainability. And Phil, if you have some surplus money, for old time's sake, just send it. What we could do with it. But the financial sustainability, because see, any which way you look at the numbers, just a reality check, not more than 30% of India is going to get vaccinated this calendar year. Because if you push the numbers of the vaccines available and the entitlements, etc. So I personally feel that it's going to be another year before India is really back, unlike some of the smaller countries or a place like Israel, where the population is more or less already vaccinated, and they do have a vaccine passport. And as per the latest rules, you can attend a concert, live concert with 1,000 people, provided you show the vaccine passport at the entry gate. So you have a sense of what's happening in some of the other places. So I'm cautious about India. I think we have to manage our finances well to survive for another year, year and a half. We just need to be careful. We can't go with our costs. I think that's what we're going to see in India at this point of time.
May I, Varoon, I know you have another question coming up and we're running out of time, but just a quick return to that is, when we look at, say, 30% of India, it's a very large number, because, it's a very small part of the country's populations that focused in tier 1 to 3 cities, right? And if we are able to sort of get to a 55, 60, 70% vaccination in our metros, a large part of Indian life will return to normal. right? So if we actually do a 30% vaccination, which is predominantly in the population centers, I feel we should be the numbers will work in our favor. I hope. Fingers crossed. And yeah, Phil, if you have spare money, and Farah, if you have spare money, just let us know.
So I have one large question I wanted to ask, and again, I'm going to start with Raviji and then Farah, but I'd love to hear from the rest of the panelists as well, which is a very simple question, which is between the beginning of the pandemic and now, we've had chances to reevaluate and replan and also see what our audiences are looking for. Has there been, or are there plans you plan to implement changing your cultural programming? I know for Farah, she's already started implementing. For Raviji, I'd love to know if has there been a large idea that's changed in how you approach or things you plan to do that will change permanently, in fact, even beyond the pandemic?
Definitely. So some we have already done. For example, we pivoted to podcasting within a week of the pandemic. And from 0 podcasts, we are now averaging 2 podcasts a week. So that's something that we already implemented. We also pivoted to the Zoom platform within a fortnight of the pandemic. So going forward, we definitely foresee hybrid as being par for the course. Hybrid is not going away. We have realized that we are able to get speakers from across the world and across time zones, provided we can get the timing right of when it goes live. So it's possible to get speakers that we could not do so in the real world. So that is definitely here to stay. So some level of hybrid offline and online is here to stay in the future. That we are very, very clear about, and it will remain with us forever as I see it. There will be some events which will continue to be purely virtual, but I think the charm is going to be a return to the real world offline events, and those are going to become extra special, because I think as human beings we have realized the value of what we missed and what we took for granted. And I think when it returns, both in terms of it's going to happen on global travel, I'm sure, but it's also going to happen in terms of in-venue events. And I think the quality of programming of the in-venue events are going to go up a notch, because those are going to be really extra special events. Earlier, given the number of events we're doing all kinds of events. You're going to find more quality events being the ones which are the physical events, and them going online on YouTube. If other than arts and culture, our talks do go online the next day. So that's the big change that I see in future that's going to happen. And I think audio is something that we'll all have to look at in a greater way, not just in terms of podcasts. What we are already noticing that our audio listen-ins are about 3x the visual medium views. So I feel that we got to figure out how we are able to give more audio experiences as extracts of what we do in the real world to our audiences going forward, because that seems to be a reasonably preferred medium for people to consume when they want at their own pace. Varoon?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I've seen the explosion of podcasts myself. But what about you, Farah? Has there been any learnings that are going to be now permanent changes as well?
Absolutely, Varoon. So like Mr. Ravichander just said that, it has really changed the way we look at our events now. It's not just pure online or offline event. We are looking at, definitely looking at hybrid. So whenever we are imagining an event, so let me just start by saying that this pandemic has worked in 2 ways for us. One, which is that it has really expanded the scope. Which means that we are not limited just to our city, our audience, our people who we want to invite. It has just opened up a huge scenario. The other thing that has happened is that events have also become very intimate. Yeah, like I am talking to like whatever 4 or 5 people here now, and I'm thinking that I'm in a very intimate situation, but I don't know how many thousands might be listening. You never know. And this whole experience of intimacy often is missing when we are doing these large events, and sometimes even when we are doing offline events, on venue events. So both these things we have realized these two things, and I don't think we are going to let this go. We are reimagining everything. Like, for instance, I already talked about refunction online grant, or we thought people are spending too much time on their screen, so we came up with performance on phone. So that we have a play that is going to be, you can dial in, and it's an experiential play. You kind of play. This is going to premiere in April, which Neil Chaudhary is doing. So we are coming up with different formats that is not only limited to just here, Delhi. I mean, Phil and Catherine can dial in from UK and listen to that play, and it opens up this huge audience for us. So I think for us, the way of looking at an event and looking at our audience, it has completely changed. And I think also what he just now said is that it also gave us a breather, because we were just doing events after events after events, not really analyzing what we are supposed to do or analyzing how we need to take this whole thing forward. How should we analyze our audience? It gave us also time to think, to breathe, to analyze, and take this whole situation now with a very clear mind and understanding forward.
There's a lot there, and I love how Farah mentions how this actually just ferments more artistic thinking. In fact, one of the things about the pandemic was the so much content suddenly became available for people to consume, especially from the UK. One of the highlights for me was watching Complicité's The Encounter, which used binaural audio. And from what I understand, also binaural audio experiences are something very people are very interested in. In fact, also we have an IVRS play that's currently being performed with FESPO in the youth festival. I'm not part of it. I'm too old. My younger team is part of it. But it's an exciting play, and it's lovely to see that Neil is also doing the same thing. It's really opened up these different ideas. And I don't know for you guys as well, Phil, Catherine, if there's also an excitement about new possibilities coming with it. I know for Arjun, the same problem exists for all of us. No one has solved the latency issue when it comes to trying to do music together.
Yeah. There's a certain limit to which you can't solve it, right? Because there's a physical signal that needs to travel.
Mm-hmm.
So I've spent so much time on this, you have no idea. I've tried every solution out there. I've with artists across the US, Singapore, and India, and we've spent all night, 6-7 hours trying different solutions. Eventually we said no. There needs to be some physical proximity, even if it's within the same city.
And Varoon, if I can just go back to something that Farah said about the intimacy. Another thing we are thinking of experimenting, a post-event, physical event, you could do a backstage session, which is more private to a small audience, kind of a backstage post-event adda in an Indian context, which we feel could actually work. And another thing, Arjun, which I think is working for us, is pop-up events in our F&B setup. So weekend for independent chefs, we have now started looking at food as another event stream. Traditionally, we used to look at conversation, arts and culture as the kind of events we were doing, but we are now seeing the potential of doing these pop-up indie chef events over the weekend as variety. It also brings in the money, brings in people, and can become another channel in terms of looking at food events, culinary experiences as events too.
I'm glad you mentioned. I've been having these conversations over the last 2 weeks with my partnership as well. It's a very good idea. I'm maybe going to get in touch with you to sort of understand how you've approached this. Thank you.
Well, the last thing I'd like to do, also thank everybody for their time and being part of it. At Kaivalya Plays, we are just about everything we do has its ground and foundation in improvisation, and we never conclude a session without doing some type of closing ritual to kind of ground ourselves, and also because it's been so tough, sometimes we just need to give ourselves a break. So I'm going to ask everyone to just finish the sentence for themselves. It's a very simple game. You just have to conclude the sentence with anything, whether it's real, imaginary, anything. The sentence is, wouldn't it be nice if? I generally finish that sentence, and wouldn't it be nice if I could eat whatever I wanted and never put on any weight? But it's completely open to you based on everything you're going through. There may be some goal that you have in mind that seems impossible, but it's always great to just vocalize whatever it is. So I'm going to give everyone a second just to think that through and finish that sentence. Wouldn't it be nice if?
So wouldn't it be nice if the money kept coming in so that I could just focus on providing everyone with that absolutely great experience through programs.
I hear that. Phil, Catherine?
I guess for me, wouldn't it be nice if I could go on a holiday again? It's something I'm missing dramatically. So yes, that would be nice.
Yeah, I would second that one as well. But wouldn't it be nice if I could sit at the back of a packed auditorium and experience one of those moments where everybody holds their breath?
I would like to say, wouldn't it be nice to be back at Piano Man with a house full, with a German band playing?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to answer that with the musical face.
I think that's the best way to do it. Great job, Arjun. By the way,
this has been my COVID. By the way, I've loved this instrument. I bought this 17 years ago, and I started working on it the day the lockdown happened.
I think that's the best way to conclude, by reminding everyone that we've had the chance to reflect and kind of get into things that we have put aside, at least some of the things. Okay, well, thank you again. I have a note from my team that I can share because I'm terrible at concluding events, but we'd just like to say that the last thing at Kaivalya Plays is we've started a new campaign called Safe Art Saves Art. We're asking any art venue owners, arts workers, audiences to share bite-sized video walkthroughs of the safety protocols they have at different venues. We want to collect this information and make a collaborative video playlist so anybody can see what those safety procedures are. And again, hopefully this will work towards the future, as well as give audiences and artists confidence getting into room, also defining for venues what your procedures are, because another tough thing is when people come in and use your venue and present there and they don't follow your procedures. So to follow more about our projects, please follow us at Kaivalya Plays. Please follow Goethe-Institut, Bangalore International Center. As well, we also have a video from Ravichander of theirs walkthrough, which we'll be sharing after the session, so you can find more resources. So we did speak with Anand at Ravichander to get their walkthrough, which is going to be fascinating. Please go check out Piano Man. It's one of my favorite places. I'm looking forward to get back in. I'm fascinated to hopefully get to see Soho. Gaurav, our general manager, is in the UK. In fact, he dropped out of the call just now because he is in fact getting vaccinated at this very second in the UK. So hence he's not here. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I really do respect the work of Phil Brown. It's one of those areas that we'd love to see expanded in India. I'd really thank you for making some time to share those concepts with us. If there's anything anyone would like to say, please feel free. You have a couple of minutes left. Otherwise, we're happy to conclude it here. And again, we'll be sharing any information. We'll give you contact information for everyone on the panel so you can get in touch and find them and ask any questions if you'd like to.
Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. For those watching, again, on behalf of Kaivalya Plays and the Arts and Culture Resources Institute and ArtX Company, thank you so much for tuning in. Please send any further questions. We're always happy to get back to you and learn more. And if you have ideas for other panels you'd like to see, also let us know. Thank you so much.
Dipti should switch on her video to confirm she was there till the end.
I'm sure she's going to try logging back in. She's actually watching us on Facebook, making sure that's working correctly. Okay, thank you so much, and see you soon.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.